Subcommittee will reconvene. Let me start off with Archivist Ferriero. In your statement, you point out that NARA will promulgate new policies in the form of a bulletin on Web 2.0 and social media platforms. This is on top of guidance NARA issued in '05 and '06. It sounds like you need to continually assess the implications of new technologies and respond accordingly. Does NARA do that proactively in response to agency requests, and how is that accomplished?
It actually happens in a couple of ways. But let me first correct what I said in response to Congressman McHenry's question. The latest guidance is September 2006, and that covers wikis, blogs, web portals, and RSS feeds, a lot of the 2.0 technologies that already exist. So the updated bulletin that will come out this fall deals with social media that have products that have come out since then. In terms of how we work with the agencies on that, one of the imperatives that I have brought to the agency is that if we're going to be advising other agencies on how to be using these tools, we need to be using them ourselves. So there's been an explosion, I would say, in the last 6 months at the archives and the use of these 2.0 technologies. So that's one way. And the work that we have been doing with the agencies in terms of this evaluation and assessment is another way that we keep on top of what is being used now.
Can you tell us more about NARA's own use of Web 2.0 to engage researchers and stakeholders and improve internal communications?
We have been aggressively using tools internally and externally to gather reactions, inputs, feedback on various new ways of doing business. We are, as you know, as every agency is, dealing with a very severe budget year ahead, and we have been using IdeaScale, one of the social media tools, internally to gather ideas from the staff about how we can do business much more efficiently and effectively and save money. So that's one way that we've been doing that. We are in the process of redesigning our website, and so we've been using similar tools to get the same kind of feedback from our user community, from the stakeholders, about how they feel about the redesign.
Can you please explain how the very nature of Web 2.0 content, like blogs, comments, editable wikis, Twitter feeds, Facebook discussions, possibly time-sensitive web links, pose challenges to agencies, unlike any previous type of federal record?
They certainly require one to rethink the definition of record. Each one of these new technologies gives us the opportunity to kind of rethink what is a record, how long it needs to be kept, and what part of that technology is permanent that we need to be accommodating in perpetuity.
Thank you for your responses. Mr. McClure, there have been several recent reports regarding GSA's policy on the personal use of social media by agency employees. Can you explain GSA's policy and any guidelines the agency has provided to employees related to their use of social media in their personal lives?
Chairman Clay, the GSA social media policy is actually constructed by our CIO office, so I probably would have to get you a formal answer back from our CIO. The GSA policy, I do think, makes a distinction between using social media tools for official government business versus using it on your own personal time. So I know that's a distinction in our policy, but we can certainly give you some specifics from the CIO office.
Yeah. Would you provide the
Absolutely.
committee with that information? Thank you. Mr. Wilshusen, are agencies prepared to schedule and manage Web 2.0 content as federal records?
Well, that's one of the issues that we intend to look at, Mr. Chairman, as part of the review that you requested on how agencies manage and protect information that they gather through these social media sites and everything. So that's something we do plan on looking at. And we will be looking at the 24 major CFO Act agencies as part of our scope of that review.
In your initial review, have you been able to identify any agencies that are doing well with 2.0 records management?
No, I wouldn't say that we've identified, because again, we're at a very early stage, but we have found that there are a number of agencies that are using those technologies in order to interact better with the public, and several agencies that are using it in what seems to be a very effective manner in terms of interacting with the public and getting out their message through videos as well as through blogs in which they help interact with the individuals.
And what are the Freedom of Information Act implications for Web 2.0 content?
Well, one of the key issues associated with that is determining whether or not the information that's maintained by third-party providers through these technologies is actually susceptible and to Freedom of Information Act requests. And so because what we found looking at the Department of Justice guidelines is that it identifies 4 criteria to determine whether or not agency is agency records for the purposes of Freedom of Information Act, and those are rather strenuous and strict criteria. So agencies might be challenged in order to meet each of those as it relates to Freedom of Information Act's request for information collected by those third-party providers.
But just is the dilemma about separating and determining what should fall under FOIA?
Yes, and making sure that the agency has adequate control over the information in order for it to be an agency record under FOIA.
Okay, all right. Dr. Ferriero, what, I guess as heading towards a wrap-up of the hearing today, what do you see as the areas this subcommittee in its oversight and information policy role should continue to examine?
I think it's clear in the self-assessment that we shared with you not too long ago that the agencies themselves have identified, 80% of the agencies have identified that they are at moderate to high risk around electronic records. So we need to be providing more guidance to the agencies around these electronic records, and I'm hopeful that the new bulletin that we come out is going to be a trigger for us to be more aggressive with those agencies.
I hope so too. Thank you for your response. Dr. McClure, in your written testimony, you give many examples of the innovative Web 2.0 applications federal agencies are currently using. Can you please talk about one example of an external application and one internal application that demonstrate the potential of these technologies?
Well, I think from most of these tools that are being adopted are actually external rather than internal. They're easy, lightweight, agile applications that are relatively inexpensive in the market, or in many cases they're being offered at no cost to federal agencies. So I think in a general sense there's a great list of social media tools in the idea management, challenge and platform, contest space, in ranking and rating ideas and problem-solving engagements with the public that cover both commercial as well as no-cost products. We actually, from our perspective, from an efficiency perspective, think that a lot of the software that's available in the marketplace, it meets a lot of the agency needs in these areas, so there's little need for an agency to be building its own software, developing its own tools when the market is so robust as it is today. So almost every example that I can point to in my statement is using mostly either no-cost or very lightweight commercial applications for interaction, engagement, contest and challenges, or notifications to the public, as is the case with the TED system at U.S. Geological Survey.
Thank you for your response, and I've already asked the archivist this, but I'll ask the panel-wide question. What do you see as the areas this subcommittee, in its oversight of NARA and information policy, should continue to examine? We'll start with you, Dr. McClure.
Right, thank you. I think, Chairman Clay, that we should not lose the perspective of the benefits that the government is getting from social media tools. It's one reason why, in my statement, we documented as thoroughly as we could the use of this technology across the government. It is true that there are challenges in the policy area for the adoption of social media. And I think we've identified many of them in the records management area in today's hearing. Number one is what constitutes a record. That has to be determined by the agency. That's not something that is totally defined by any guidance put out by the government. Number two, we have the challenge of content changing constantly on these websites. So what is a record? Is it something that changes every 20 seconds, every minute? That creates huge challenges for agencies in terms of volume and the type of information they constitute a record. The third challenge is the social media tools themselves that are being made available to the government are not configured to operate in accordance with Federal Records Act provisions. These are commercial products that are built for everyday use by consumers or organizations outside of government. So it's no easy task for a lot of these tools to be compliant with policy provisions like the Federal Records Act.
Should private industry rework or redesign tools specifically for government?
Well, our position at GSA is before we bring a tool into the government, it must be compliant. And we encourage agencies to follow examples of how other agencies are making sure of that. The GSA procurement schedules, for example, if it's a for-fee product, they have to meet federal guidelines in order to be purchased by any federal agency. And I'll tell you lastly that for any no-cost product that we have brought into the federal government for government-wide use, we have put it through all the policy and legal compliance tests to make sure that we're not violating or not following guidance under these laws.
Thank you for your response. Mr. Welsh-Husen, what should we continue to examine as a subcommittee?
Right, I would second everything that Dr. McClure stated as key challenges and issues to address. But I would also add privacy and security challenges associated with the use of these technologies, because they do collect a lot of personal information on these websites and through these social networking sites that needs to be protected. And to what extent Privacy Act applies, as well as other security threats that are potentially exposing that information to risk, are issues that should also be addressed. And that's something that we will be looking at as part of our review.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up security. I just completed my information security course required by all members of the House.
Congratulations.
And I passed. Mr. Simpson.
Yeah, I would completely concur with my colleagues on the panel. I would emphasize the problems and challenges with privacy and security, and I would add a suggestion. I mean, you've recently had a look at cloud computing, and that is very much related to all of this. That's tied into Web 2.0. But I would urge the committee not necessarily only to look in the abstract at these technologies, but to examine very closely the companies that are providing these services and look at their approaches to the challenges, to privacy and to security, and to whether they in fact live up to what they say they're going to do, which is why I think this committee would have complete oversight to call somebody like Google in and talk to them about their privacy practices and how this horrible thing could have happened with Y-Spy. Another example of this, which relates to the cloud and security, goes precisely to the tendency of technology companies to overpromise. Google has touted the fact that it sold its cloud services to Los Angeles. And the fact of the matter is the deadline was blown. The city of Los Angeles is about to have to come up with another $500,000 or so to cover licenses that they didn't expect to have because Google was unable to meet the security requirements on the government cloud that were required by the Los Angeles Police Department. That's the kind of issue that I think this committee should be exploring, and I think that it's essential, again, that you do it by talking to specific companies.
Thank you for that. And contrary to what was stated earlier, I am continuously open to members from both sides of the aisle on suggestions for future hearings, and I will entertain those suggestions when they're brought to me. And let me thank all of the witnesses for their indulgence today. I know we got off to a bumpy start, but because of you all, you made this hearing complete. And I thank you. This hearing is adjourned.